I like to say glowing words about our great Femi in advance as a new year comes around.
Yes,
Femi,
almost here.
You are a sky full of stars.
Oh, Rufai.
Happy birthday in advance, Femi.
Happy birthday, Eve. Adefemi.
Birthday Eve, indeed. Thank you, my friends. That is so sweet of you.
I'm going to save my wishes to tomorrow.
To tomorrow. Wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you all. Good morning to you all. What a wonderful weekend we've all had, isn't it?
Yes.
Lots of celebrations.
Yes.
Oh, jam-packed.
Jam-packed, right? Long may it continue. Good morning to you, viewers. I hope you also had a good weekend. Let me tell you what's happening around the world. Now, high-profile resignations have rocked the BBC as Director General Tim Davie, that's him there, and also the head of news, Deborah Turner, that's her right here. They have both stepped down following outrage over a Panorama special on Donald Trump. Now, the program was found to have misled the audience by editing clips of the US president's January 6th speech, prompting accusations of bias and of major credibility crises for the broadcaster. Now, this is what the documentary implied Donald Trump had said. Let's take a listen.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
But see, that's not actually true. This is what Donald Trump actually said in that moment. Let's take a listen.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen.
Well, did you hear the difference? There definitely was one. Well, a British newspaper, The Telegraph, it published details of a leaked internal BBC memo that suggested the Panorama programme edited two parts of the Trump speech together. But the truth is, those clips were actually 50 minutes apart. So he appeared to explicitly encourage the Capitol Hill riot of January 2021 when that's not actually what he said. Now, in their statements, both Davie and Turness cited the ongoing controversy and damage to public trust as key reasons for their exit. It is the latest in a string of troubles for the BBC, including accusations of bias in BBC Arabic's coverage of the Israel-Gaza war. And there's also been issues of editorial disputes and falling audiences also. Now, this does leave Britain's public broadcaster facing renewed pressure to rebuild its reputation. Well, staying in the United Kingdom, and the country's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office has issued a fresh travel advisory warning its citizens to stay away from 21 Nigerian states. Now, this is the map that they have used on their website, different colours showing which areas are safer than the others. Now, this is over what is called heightened risk of terrorism, kidnapping and civil unrest. Now, the Foreign Office cited ongoing insecurity in parts of the northwest, where you're seeing this red here, and also the Niger Delta towards the south of the country. It is urging British nationals already in those areas to leave immediately and maintain a high level of vigilance across the country. Now, in the northeast of Nigeria, the FCDO did advise against all travel to Borno, Yobe, Adamawa and Gombe states, citing a risk of retaliatory attacks due to regular ongoing military operations in those areas. Now, in the northwest, the FCDO did advise against all travel to Katsina and Zamfara states. The office advised against all but essential travel to Kaduna, Kebbi, Jigawa and Sokoto states. And the same went for the likes of our northeast regions, so the likes of Niger, also Plateau, Kogi too, Taraba, all of them, as well as Abia State towards the south, have been put together as places where we need more vigilance for British citizens. Now, if we move on to our next story, staying within the African continent, let's move over to Tanzania now. Now, Tanzanian authorities have detained a senior official from the main opposition party, Chadema. That is amid a spate of arrests in connection to deadly protests during last week's and last month's elections. Now, Chadema said that its Deputy Secretary General Amani Golugwa was arrested by police on Saturday. Authorities are seeking the arrest also of 9 more people, including others in the party. Let's not forget that more than 1,000 people were killed by security forces during the demonstrations, according to to Chadema and human rights bodies. Now, the Tanzanian government itself has said that these figures were exaggerated, but it actually hasn't given its own figures instead. Tanzanian authorities have also charged more than 2,000 people with treason after last week's protests. These charges could carry the death penalty, though no executions have actually been carried out in Tanzania since 1995. And finally, before we move on to papers, within the United States, US Senate has voted 60-40 on a key step towards reopening the government. Now, the vote came after a critical group of 8 Senate Democratic centrists reached a deal with Senate GOP leaders and the White House to reopen the government in exchange for a future vote on extending enhanced affordable care subsidies. Now, there is far more to come before the government can reopen. Only anyone's senator can delay this consideration, so it is quite fragile, of this package for several days. Plus, the House will then have to return and adopt to the deal struck in the Senate before it gets sent to President Trump's desk. That being said, the shutdown effects have been felt across the country, across the United States, with jobs, social welfare payments, flights, critical services, all of them impacted by this shutdown, which has gone on for more than 39 days. This is the longest shutdown in US history. Now, we'll come over to my colleagues for their thoughts on the World Brief, but first, let's also take a look at today's newspapers. As ever, we begin with the front page of This Day. This Day does lead with what we're seeing in Anambra State. Now, Anambra State Governor Professor Chukwuma Soludo has, of course, won a second term in a landslide, reinforcing the power of incumbency in Nigeria elections. Now, Soludo of APGA, he did defeat his closest rivals, of Nicholas Ukachukwu of the APC, who scored some 99,445 votes. Now, there were 16 political parties that contested in this election, which was conducted largely peacefully by INEC, though it did face claims of voter apathy and alleged vote buying. The President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and the Nigerian Governors Forum have congratulated Soludo for his victory, praising his leadership and promising continued collaboration with the federal government. Now, Soludo himself has pledged to consolidate on his achievements during his first term. Also on the front page of This Day, let's take a look at this image here. It is of Angolan President João Lourenço, who is honored Nigeria's late head of state, General Murtala Mohammed, for his role in securing Angola's independence. Angola's Independence Day is November 11th, which is the same day as my own birthday, so we share that in common. And that is, of course, tomorrow. And thank you. Well, the award was received by General Murtala Mohammed's children. We have about Rizka Murtala Mohammed and Aisha Mohammed Oyebode, who were there during the celebrations in Luanda, over in Angola, marking Angola's 50th independence anniversary in their capital. Let's move over to the New Telegraph this morning, which does lead with AMCON's handover of Tinapa Business and Leisure Resort to the Cross River State Government. Now, this marks what Governor Basiotu has described as the rebirth of a legacy project. Now, the governor pledged to transform Tinapa into a hub for tourism, manufacturing and technology after years of inactivity and vandalism, essentially. Also on the front page of the New Telegraph, just here, it is what we were just talking about during the World Brief. It is the UK government issuing a fresh travel advisory warning its citizens against travel through some Nigerian states due to rising insecurity, kidnappings, and other inter-communal violence examples. Now, the advisory does list, as we already discussed, Borno, Yobe, Adamawa, Gombe, Katsina, and Zamfara among the high-risk areas, and cautions against non-essential travel to several others, including parts of Abuja. Let's move over to the Daily Independent this morning and take a look at what they've got for us. It does lead with sky-high fares in Nigeria blamed on expanding web of federal government levies. Now, from the 1st of December, the NCAA will begin collecting an additional $11.50 advance passenger information system charge per international ticket. This is a move that could generate nearly $1 billion over 20 years. Now, travelers and industry players say that the new levy will further inflate already high prices in the market and worsen Nigeria's status as one of Africa's costliest air travel markets. Let's take a look at the Daily Trust. The Daily Trust this morning does report that INEC chairman, Professor Joash Amopitan, has faced or is facing controversy over this 2020 legal brief in which he allegedly described Boko Haram attacks and Fulani herdsmen killing as genocidal campaigns against Christians. Now, the federal government has remained silent on this issue so far, while the Supreme Council for Sharia has called for his removal. Now, some legal experts have argued that his past opinion does not conflict with his current role. It'll be very interesting to hear your thoughts on that. Let's take a look at the Punch, however. The Punch does lead with over 3,000 delegates being set to attend the PDP National Convention in Ibadan. This is clearly amid this bitter clash that we're seeing within the party. You've got the acting national chairman, Umar Damagum, backed by governors, facing opposition from Nyesom Wike's camp, who are, of course, led by suspended National Secretary Samuel Ayamu. Now, conflict and court rulings have intensify the dispute, with Damagum's faction insisting that the convention will go ahead, while you've got Wike's group calling it illegal. A lot happening there on the front page of the Punch. Let's take a look at our next paper today. We've got the Daily Sun, and the Daily Sun does report that Nigerians are decrying house rent hikes. Seriously, this is something that is continuing to balloon and spiral. They're saying agony is spreading. This is something that is happening nationwide. We're seeing increases from 50 to 90% across major cities. Here in Lagos, both residential and commercial rents have skyrocketed, forcing many families and businesses to relocate, downgrade, or even default. Now, the Lagos State government says it plans to enforce a flexible rent system that can cap agency fees to protect tenants. Now, let's take a look at our African papers. We've got a very strong headline here on the standard of Kenya. Vimbai actually sent this to the group this morning, and it really woke me up out of our sleep. A trinity of terror, they're calling it, spotlighting rising repression in East Africa. It reports Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni admission that 2 Kenyans were tortured in Uganda, while Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu's bloody re-election has drawn comparisons to authoritarian rule. The paper goes on, and the article itself goes on to warn that Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania risk sliding towards 1930s-style dictatorship, likening the region's political climate to Europe under Hitler and Mussolini. Very strong words there. Let's take a look at some UK papers. Let's take a look at the Daily Express. The Daily Express does have the emotions being captured from the Remembrance Day ceremony as the King Charles, led the nation in solemn tribute to Britain's fallen heroes. You got the Princess of Wales, Catherine, photographed wiping away tears during the moving service held in honour of those who lost their lives in war. It also reports on our first story on the World Brief this morning, which is, of course, the shake-up at the BBC, where Director General Tim Davie has resigned following allegations that footage of this US presidential speech that he gave on January 6, 2021 was actually doctored to make it sound as though he was encouraging the riots, when, as we've seen in the World Brief, that was not what happened. So those are your World Brief stories. Those are your newspapers from around the world. Love to hear your thoughts.
Okay, sorry. A lot to talk about. Yeah. Please, I've condemned the INEC chairman for the Anambra elections. But on this, that he gave a legal opinion calling something Christian genocide, I would say leave Amopitan alone. Amopitan is nobody's problem. He gave a legal opinion based on his research and his legal authority as a then.
Yes, at that time.
Yes. All right?
Exactly.
And we cannot deny the fact that Christians are big. You see, all of these attempts to pit it Christians against Muslims is never the way forward. Christians are being killed. All right? So please, it's not a religious back and forth. Leave Joash Amopitan out of this. He wrote his legal opinion based on the facts available to him. Let's not mitigate this matter. All Nigerians that are being killed, we must stop the killings. Because I'm hearing that the Muslim rights group are saying he should leave his position. No. Let's face the problem. Because I know Nigeria so well. This is the confusion we will now use at a smoke screen to get away from the problem. Secondly, as regards Trump, what BBC did was terrible. It's not journalism, it's propaganda. It's not journalism.
It's wrong.
It's wrong. But didn't Trump do what they said he did? When Kamala lost election, Did you see Kamala go and stay in front of the Capitol on the day they want to count the votes and host rally? Couldn't she have done that? Did she do that?
She didn't.
Didn't Trump finally say that day and encourage the people to go out there? Have you ever seen Trump come out one day in our lives? Trump that claims he's a law and order person, that he likes law and order, sanctity of the police force. Did you ever see him pay tribute to the police officers killed at the Capitol that day? Didn't Trump go ahead to pardon those that caused the riots there? In fact, he pardoned them to the extent that some of those that were pardoned said, I don't deserve a pardon. That I did the crime, I should do the time. But he went ahead to pardon them. Didn't he do all the things he was that they put against him? He did it. Didn't he commit an insurrection? He did it. Let's not tell lies. He did it. But what the BBC did, was it good? No. False. You don't do that. You don't cut and join to make a narrative. It's not done. It's best for the BBC to have played the clear video the way it is. It has to be said.
All right. Okay, so first of all, I'll say that whilst the BBC incident was a blight on journalism and the ethics of the profession, this resignation hopefully would restore some faith. Tim Davie in Resigning had said that they must be open, transparent and accountable, and that's what journalism should be. Also, I think the lady had talked about, the news head had talked about the fact that anyone who is in public life must be accountable, hence the reason. I'm using the word accountable again and again for very obvious reasons, because where we see issues like this, the only way we can deal with it is if there's accountability. In other parts of the world, we just be swept under the carpet, they'll now start bringing another group to come and say, no, it's from our area, it's from our town. They just want to finish the BBC because we're telling the truth. But we see what accountability means, where you've been caught out in a lie or you've been seen to doctor a video, as we saw in the BBC, they were able to step down. If they didn't step down, they would probably have been sacked. You know, so I think it's a good move. But what it then does for the BBC, especially the Arabic service, which has been said now that maybe there's a propaganda with their reportage of what's happening in Gaza, is that it then questions their integrity. It questions, the news report. And I don't know how long it will take for them to win back the trust of people, because trust me, if nobody else, but Trump will continue to bring up this matter again and again and refer to it as why or not the BBC should not be trusted. But I think, this is a good move in trying to uphold the very revered, role that journalism and media plays in democracy, and how we can shape opinions, shape public opinion. Very important. Absolutely. And then moving on to the Anambra election, one thing I didn't mention earlier was the opposition parties and what it says about opposition parties in Nigeria currently. The PDP came 6th at Adefemi.
Yes.
They were only, Eze14 was only able to get 1,401 votes. PDP. The main opposition party. So it's a shame, it's a disgrace. I know we're saying that what is happening in the PDP, the internal wranglings, would show itself even from elections like the Anambra elections. What will happen in Osun State? What will happen in 2027? Is the PDP losing its foothold as the main opposition parties? Do we even have any opposition party in Nigeria? Because all the others, the victory was landslide for Governor Soludo. So, just to talk about opposition and where we are today and we cannot survive as a democracy without strong opposition.
Indeed, thank you.
All right, I think BBC is certainly one of the biggest story of the days, especially given our line of work here. And you now realize how fragile credibility is, because one mistake, one error of this nature means that your years of credibility now stand to be questioned. We now ask, where else have these indiscretions happened? Has this been intentional? There are different narratives. Some are saying it was an intentional, narrative spin, and some are saying, well, it was just an oversight, because the BBC is such a huge organization that sometimes the ball gets dropped. However, what's emerging is the fact that there is tension between the board and the newsroom. And this is something that I think happens in all media houses, because you have to remember that media, at the end of the day, is at the intersection of business and duty and responsibility to the public.
But it's not. You pay TV rights money.
You pay TV rights money, but there's still it's TV rights money. However, it still has it's not profit, but it's still
not a clear
business.
example of business.
It's not a profit business, but the organizational structure is that of a business model. But anyway, having said that, I think it's time for us to have these conversations. We have it about Rupert Murdoch. We have it about there's so many media empires that we've now had to sit down and have a conversation about and say, what do they really stand for, especially in this polarized era that we live in. Now, very quickly to East Africa. Thank you so much for taking that newspaper headline. It's terrifying for me, the Trinity of Terror, as they're calling it, Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya, especially because over the weekend, Museveni, who is on the campaign trail, had openly alluded to the fact that 2 Kenyan activists had come into Uganda. They came in 39 days ago, supporting Bobi Wine, Robert Chagulanyi, and they disappeared. And he openly said that, well, Kenya called them and said, well, you can keep them in Uganda or you can deport them and send them back. And he said, well, he chose the option to keep them in the fridge. So we don't know what that means, but those 2 activists, 39 days now, according to Museveni, they're in the fridge, and this is scary. As I must round up at home in Cross River State. I congratulate Cross River State and Governor Prince Bassi Otu on the return of our glory. Tinapa Resort is one of the glorious monuments of Cross River State. I hope we can rebuild it, restore it back to its former glory, because it was truly a beacon of the state. And also congratulate him and his family on the wedding of his son, who wed over the weekend, Frank and Sylvia. Wishing you a happy married life.
Thank you all.
All right. Thank you so much, Adefemi. And we look forward to a birthday edition of the World Brief tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Thank you so much. See you tomorrow.